Hello my dear friends, my name is Sanne and welcome back to another video. Today we're gonna be doing a book talk video. Booktube. We're doing a book video. I haven't done a book video in a while. I love doing these because I love reading a lot and I love watching booktube videos. So I like to dive into that type of content every once in a while as well. But yeah, I'm just really excited. Today we're going to be talking about all of the books that I read in 2024 and I'm going to be ranking them for you and give you like tiny little reviews. So it's probably going to be a long video because I read over 50 books. Yeah, I have all the books in here. I'm going to be talking about all of them. I'm going to be rating all of them. I made 5 different tiers. At the bottom I have should have DNF'd. I don't really DNF books often, but there are definitely some books that I probably should have DNF'd because they were awful. It's not that much. I haven't had that feeling about many books this year, so that's all good. Then I have I guess. So the book exists. It's there. I've read it. Was it good? No. Didn't have a good time, but I also didn't have a terrible time. It wasn't god awfully written. So, I guess it exists. The middle tier, there's just something wrong. So it was an enjoyable book. I had a decent time with it. However, there was just something that was just rubbing me the wrong way, or that I just wasn't vibing with, or, something like that. Then we have great, but not perfect. So it was a really enjoyable book. I had a good time, but it just wasn't that 5-star feeling for me. A 5-star book to me has a specific feeling. It's a book that makes me think about it for a long time after. And then at the top we have 10/10, would read again. Great book, wonderful book. Have thought about it a lot. Would probably read it again in the future at some point. Those are all the tiers. And today we're going to be talking about all of the books that I read. And like I said, it's over 50. I'm going to try to give you like the shortest summary and review that is possible in my brain, because I don't want to make this a 2-hour long video. Fun times. Let's get started. I'll go in chronological order. Start at the beginning of the year. So at the beginning of the year, the first book I read was A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas, which I rated. What did I rate this? I think it's like 4 stars. So this is a part of the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, which is of course a very well-known series. I read that one over 2023 and then I just had to finish A Court of Silver Flames. So I read that at the beginning of this year. It was good. I thought it was enjoyable. I thought it was one of the more enjoyable books. But the thing is, I won't give you... this is about one of the sisters of the main character in the ACOTAR series, because this is like a spin-off book, I guess. It's a thick book, and it's about her kind of like finding herself and finding friendship and finding love. And I kind of really enjoyed her character arc, and I love that we have like a sentient house thingy. That was very enjoyable. So there are a lot of things that were very enjoyable. The thing is with me is I enjoy smutty books or spicy books. I don't mind them, but I kind of like, if I want to read a smutty book, I'll pick a smutty book. But I don't enjoy when I just pick like a romance or something that I'm gonna enjoy and then suddenly there's a lot more smut than I expected there to be. Yeah, I don't know. That's what I didn't really like about the romance in this book, which is a big part of the plot, honestly. It's also been a while. I rated it 4 stars, so that would be great, but not perfect. Which I think true. I like now looking back, I probably maybe enjoy it a bit less than I did at the time. But I know at the time I had a really good time with it and I read it quite quickly. So it's not like Sarah J. Maas's writing is just the most beautiful thing there is. No, it's not. But the thing is that it's easy to read. It's enjoyable and it's easy to read. One of the things that I don't like is all of like the alpha male kind of stuff that's in that Fae territory that they use, like the growling and the calling everyone male and female. That's not something I enjoy. But that's just me. It was enjoyable. Back then, I really enjoyed it. Right now, I don't know. Definitely wouldn't read it again, but I'm glad I read it. It was a fun experience, I guess. That's how I started the year. Thick book. Then I decided to maybe also get into some audiobooks this year. So I first read I Kissed Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. It was fine. I gave this 4 stars. Honestly, I don't remember much about this. I don't even know what this book is about anymore. So it's about a teenager a girl. There's like this popular girl in school, and she goes missing or something. And she is the last person who kissed her, I guess. Which she always thought that they would have, like, they were enemies. And then they kissed or something. And then it's about her being missing and why. That's basically all I know about it. I don't remember much about this book. There was really something wrong. I'm like, there should be like, I should add a row. Good enough. I'll say good enough. Let's give it a different color. I might move A Court of Silver Flames into that as well. And this one especially, like, it wasn't like something was wrong. It was enjoyable. I would give it like a 3.5 stars. So not a 4 stars, not a 3 stars, a 3.5. So it's good that I added another tier. Then I have a Dutch book which is called Winternacht. So this is technically one book containing 3 short stories by different writers. And I read the first short story like beginning of the year, and then the last 2 I read at the end of the year. So I think I'm just gonna like rate the entire book on its own, because this is supposed to be a collection of cozy thrillers and mysteries. The first one I feel like definitely lived up to that, because the first one, which is called Winternacht, it was about a woman going on a trip to like the Alps or something with her boyfriend around Christmas time. There was like some weird stuff going on, someone going missing, someone getting murdered, and like a whole kidnapping situation or whatever. So it's like a very thrilling mystery thing, and it was very like on the edge of my seat. I gave that one 4 stars. Then the third story, which is called Kerststuk. It's not a thriller at all, or a mystery whatsoever, to me at least, because it's about a woman who wants to leave her abusive husband, which that book needed a lot of trigger warnings, honestly. And then there's like a second part of the story, which is about a family that they know, and that woman gets really sick and passes away, and then in the end the man that's left with his child and then the woman who left her abusive husband, they kind of get together. And at some point in the story, there is something like, ooh, what happened to the abusive husband? Like, is he still alive? What's going on? And then in the end of the story, they do like clarify that, which I thought that was like maybe the only kind of thriller part of the story. Everything else was just almost like this is stuff that can happen in real life, you know? That happens to a lot of people, actually. And it was really sad and a bit traumatizing. Like, they definitely should have added some trigger warnings there. I feel like it is a good story in itself, and it ends on a good note, and it's positive. The fact that it is in this mystery thriller book, it makes no sense. So I gave it 3 stars because it wasn't what was promised at all. And then the final one is called Onfortuinlijk Koekje. It's about a woman who goes to a restaurant with her friends, and she finds like a help me note in a fortune cookie, and she goes on like a mission to find out what's going on. It was all kind of like good and exciting. I had a good time with that one, except for the end. The end was so shitty. I think I gave it 3 stars as well because of that. So I would give the entire book, I would put it in there was just something wrong, because the fact that there was a story in there that is not a mystery or thriller at all, wrong, and then the ending of the final one, wrong. So just something wrong. Like, it was still enjoyable, I had a decent time, but it wasn't good. So I'll put it in that tier. And then next we have Unhinged. And this is what I mean when I say I read smutty stories when I want to read them, and then I pick a smutty story. This is an erotic door romance. I saw someone talk about this online. I'm just gonna put it here. I gave it 3 stars. It's about a door, literally a door to a woman's apartment, and this door is sentient, and we're seeing the story from his point of view. And then he is in love with the woman who lives in that apartment, and it just goes from there. And it is indeed a smutty erotic romance. It's so funny. It is ridiculous. It is hilarious because of how ridiculous it is. It's kind of camp, honestly. To me, it was very funny. I had a decent time. It was like 80 pages. Like, I went through this like, whoop, done. But it was so funny. It's not a good book whatsoever. It's not good. I gave it 3 stars because it was funny, but it's not a good book, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to anyone. So I'm gonna put it in, I guess, Then next up, we have Tally of the Tides by Monica Booth. I'm not gonna lie to you. I read all of Monica Booth's pirate stories this year. She has like 3 full books and 1 short story, I think. I read all of them. Which means I have no clue which book had what story whatsoever. Some of them I liked more than the others. I think this one, I remember being like really excited about this one. After reading this one, I was like, I need to read all of her other pirate books. This one is about Inez. She was a French girl and she decided to flee France because she doesn't like the French nobility luxury life, and she wants to be a pirate. She meets a pirate called Will Sands, and then they kind of like, it's like a enemies to lovers kind of thing, and then they kind of like become pirates together, and it's enjoyable. It's very, very fun. So I'm gonna put that in great but not perfect. Like, I didn't really have many notes about that, and I liked it so much that I immediately wanted to read all of her other pirate books, and it completely took me back to like my Pirates of the Caribbean loving days. I'm gonna put it in there. Then next up, I have Slowfoot by Brom, which I'm immediately also gonna put in great but not perfect. I gave this 4 stars back then. It's great. It's not perfect, but it's great. I did love this book. This is like magical, witchy kind of stuff. This is about like, what year? I'm bad at like year things. I think it's 18th century or 19th, because this is in New England. So it's about a woman who lives in a Puritan colony, and she's married to a man who she doesn't really know much about, but she's like, it's fine. But then the man dies. Shocking. In like a weird way. There's this entity called Slowfoot who meets her, and he's like a devilish forest creature. And they kind of made a pact. She's kind of like branded a witch, and then it's kind of like she becomes a witch, and it's so good. The writing is beautiful. Brom makes like little drawings per chapter as well, which is also beautiful. I thought this was a great book. I felt it was a bit slow at times, but the slowness does work with the story very well. But like at sometimes I just felt it was a bit too slow and I couldn't really keep my attention. But that's maybe also just because I like to have constant entertainment. That's just how my brain works. So it is a really good book, and I would definitely recommend it. It's beautiful, it's witchy, it's a bit feminist, difficult to read sometimes about like, you know, how women were treated back then. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's a good book. Then next I have Murder at the Well, which is another audiobook that I read. It's like a cozy mystery kind of thing. And I'm gonna put it in, there was just something wrong. It was enjoyable. The characters in it were like enjoyable and fun to read about and cozy. I kind of liked like reading about all the different characters. However, this book is supposed to be like a mystery about a murder, and in the first page they kind of show you the murder, but then you go back in time, and then the entire book you're kind of working up to the murder. Then in like the last 10 pages, the murder happens and it's immediately solved. Kind of missed the mystery aspect for me. It was more like a character-driven thing. It can be character-driven without like missing any mystery. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's what I didn't really like about it. I did think some of the characters were very cute and very lovely, so it was nice to read about, but not throughout the entire book, you know? Could have been like the first few chapters and then the murder happens and then you kind of solve it. I don't know. It just wasn't what I expected. I think that's maybe it. Okay, so Murder at the Well by Debbie Young is going into... There was just something wrong. Okay, next up we have A Psalm for the Wild Build. This is gonna go into 10 out of 10 would read again. It's a bit of a shorter book. This is by Becky Chambers, and I just thoroughly enjoyed this. I think I read it in like 1 or 2 sittings. It was beautiful. It's a slow book. Like I said, like I don't mind slow books at all. Like slow books can be really good, but it's just cozy, and it kind of like speaks of a bit of a hopeful future, which I really enjoy, with all of like climate change and everything that's going on in the world. It's nice to kind of escape to a vision of the world that's a bit more enjoyable and hopeful and positive. Because this is about a future world where we at one point had robots but there was kind of like a sort of robot revolution, but not in like the negative sense, like them taking over, but they got so sentient that they were kind of like done with living with humans, and they really wanted to go out into the world and explore the world, because at this point humans have kind of made self-sustainable big cities and little villages up to a certain like area, and then everything outside of that area they leave for nature to do with whatever they will. So there's like this wild area, there's a lot more nature in the world, and the cities are very, very sustainable, and it's just kind of lovely to read about. Like, if you're like me and you worry about sustainability and climate change a lot, it's just nice to have this kind of vision of a world where everyone thinks that way about it and everyone wants to do something about it, and it can still be a very enjoyable world. But yeah, it's about a person who, they don't really enjoy their job anymore, so they want to become a tea monk. So their goal is to travel across the lands, visit different places where people live, and kind of be like a little sanctuary for them. So they provide tea in different flavors, they collect different teas, and their goal is to like get to know people and know what they need and comfort them with different types of tea, like the exact tea that they need and the conversation that they need. And that's the career that they aspire to have. So they go out and do it. But somewhere along that journey, they kind of realize that they enjoy what they're doing, but it doesn't really feel like enough. Nothing that they do feels like enough. So they go out into the wilderness where basically no one has been in years, because humans left that for nature. So you don't really feel any need to go there. Plus it's kind of dangerous and unreachable. And that's where they run into a robot and befriend a robot who was basically born and grew up in nature. It's beautiful. It's beautifully written. It's really, really nice. It's cozy. It's positive in a sense. It's also about like, what do you want to do with your life? What kind of purpose do you want to give to your life? Is there the need to find a purpose in your life? So kind of a lot of things to think about, which was nice. Sometimes it's nice to think about things, but also like have something to think about. The characters are just really lovely, and it's just a very, very cozy, kind of positive book, even though there are also a lot of negative aspects that are discussed. But yeah, I really, really, really like this one. It's also a pretty short book. You can get through it quite quickly. The writing is beautiful. I feel like I would definitely read it again in the future, just like to get a bit more, think about my outlook on life a bit. With me being unemployed right now, it's a good thing to think about, I think. But yeah, it's a nice book. It's a good book. It gives a lot of nice, basically topics of conversations for your mind, I think. Yes, I would definitely recommend that one. That one is really, really good. Next up, we have Under the Whispering Door by T.G. Klune. I gave this 4 stars back then. I think I was in a bit of a sappy mood. I'm gonna put it in great but not perfect for now. I was in a bit of a sappy mood, I think, also because of A Psalm for the Wild Build. I have some things to think about. This is an audiobook that I listened to, and it is about a man who's like a grumpy old man. He's not even that old, by the way, but he's grumpy. He thought his career was more important than anything else in his life. He didn't really have any family, didn't really have any friends. And then he dies. That's basically the first page of the book. He dies. And when you die, they kind of take your soul to a place where you can get a bit of rest and then make your way to the underworld, or like whatever is next for you, which is the Whispering Door, basically. That's the door towards the next stage of either being dead or of your life, how you want to see that. But this man arrives at that temporary place, which is a tea house. And basically this is where he first starts, like he meets people and he first starts to learn about the other things that are important in life. Like he's not even alive anymore, but finally now he allows himself basically to learn about other people, about friendship, about love, about other things that are important to a person and not just money and a career. So he basically makes a really big change. It's a very positive change. But this discusses a lot of things about death and what's next and how you view life. And I did really like it. It's like deep conversations, but in a very simple and accessible way. I really enjoyed it. I don't think I would read it again. Like, it wasn't like I was writing down quotes from this or whatever, which I did have with the Psalm for the Wild build. So I don't think I would read this again necessarily, but I did thoroughly enjoy this. So I'm gonna put it in great but not perfect. Then next up we have Horror Star by Grady Hendrix. What did I give this back then? 4 stars. I am gonna put it in great but not perfect. This is like completely different from the previous 2 books that we've talked about. This is funny as hell. This is one of the funniest books I've read this year. I loved it so much. It's about a kind of like knockoff IKEA, and the people who work in this knockoff IKEA, they start noticing like very weird things happening in their store, and they think it's like youths breaking in and messing things up in the middle of the night. So they decide to get like a bunch of them and stay a full night inside this IKEA store and find out what's happening. But turns out it's a bit more than just annoying teenagers running rampage. It's a bit more weird and paranormal, and yeah, it's a horror store. Plus, this entire book is kind of like built up as like, it has aspects of like an IKEA catalog. So it shows different furniture, and then the furniture kind of changes weirdly throughout the book. I won't spoil it, but it's really, really funny. I think the detail in this book is just very, very funny. It's very weird. So yeah, I'm gonna put it in great but not perfect. Then I have for you Shadowbound by Amelia Cole. I'm gonna put this, I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm putting this in should have DNF'd. And I will explain to you why. This book I got as an ARC. So I read the full thing because I thought this is an ARC. They're sending me this for review. I want to be able to review everything and like be a good person. So I'm gonna read all of it. It took me a long time to get through this, like a lot longer than usual. It's about big genetically modified horses that are trained by humans to fight in the war. But the war happened like a long time ago or something. These horses are now kept still in their training stables. And then there are riders for each horse who are connected to a horse. And they like train the horses. They do shows with them to show people like the history of these, I think they're called druidans. Of these magic horses. But they're not magic, but they're like big and strong and special. This felt like, you know, a horse girl who tries to write a book. And I think the worst part of it wasn't even the story itself, it was the editing of it. It was awful. It was just awful. It was really, really bad. Like loads of just grammatic errors, typing errors, spelling errors. Just that in itself, it's like even the writer herself didn't even look through the book after she wrote it the first time, basically. That's what it read like. Just also inconsistent things. Like there was one of those druidans, it had a name, a bit of a very specific name, but it was spelled differently 3 times in the same chapter. They couldn't even get a name right. And then there was like consistency errors, like the woman was described as like making noodles, grabbing her bowl, starting to eat, and doing some research on her laptop. And then 5 minutes later, or like further, like in the same paragraph, she writes like, oh, I saw something interesting. I need to look into this further. So I finished cooking my noodles and I start eating. She was already eating the noodles. Stuff like that annoyed me so much that I just couldn't enjoy the book whatsoever. Plus, I felt like this is about a woman who goes there to find something out about her missing sister. And then she meets 3 handsome horse riders who she befriends basically because she starts working there, so they're kind of her boss and her colleagues. It's basically one of these men is like he's like the leader, and then one of them is more like rugged and strong and very protective, but very nice and very like flirtatious. And then one of them is very strong and protective, but over his friends and not over a woman, and he kind of wants the woman out of there, so he's the grumpy one. You know, it's very stereotypes of men, like we have three, and they're obviously different, you know, but they're also technically the same person. And then basically this entire book is like, oh my god, this woman is so hot, we need her here. And then the woman is like, oh my god, these men are also so hot. And there's no depth or character development or anything. And I think like the whole plot that the book takes on, like about the horses and their history, and then this like rebellion that is trying to take over, that's like actually interesting. That was a good part of the book. I enjoyed that, but the rest of it I did not. So I might as well have DNF'd it, honestly. I really did not enjoy that. Next one, we have Theft of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan. I'm gonna put it in good enough for now. The thing is, I read this because some of my colleagues at work, they were doing like a little book club, and they decided, oh, we can read this book. Because one of the people said it was really, really good and we should all read it. And we all love fantasy books, so let's read this fantasy book. And I did enjoy it. Basically, this book is the first 2 books in the series. The series has 6 books. Every physical book contains 2 books or 2 stories, and there's 6 stories in the entire series. So it's the first 2 books basically that I read, and I enjoyed it, but it's such a basic, it felt like a really generic fantasy story. We have some elves, we have some dwarves, we have some knights, and we're fighting. Someone gets kidnapped and we have to save them. So it felt a bit too generic for me. The writing was also not like outstanding. There was one very cool character, a wizard, who was very fun, but he wasn't in like big parts of the book. I feel like the characters were a bit bland, like they didn't really have much personality to me. Like I'm not very attached to these characters whatsoever. So I feel like that was mainly the book. Like the story was fun enough. There were like dragons or something. There was fighting. There was a little bit of everything that's in every fantasy book basically. And I did enjoy it, but it was just a bit too normal and bland and cookie cutter fantasy basically for me. I think that's mainly it. So it didn't really stand out to me in any way. I enjoyed myself, but it's also not really a series that I feel like I need to continue. So this is where I'm keeping it. The next we have Savage Seas by Monica Booth, and I gave this 4 stars as well. Okay, so this is about Eleanor, who is a Puritan-raised girl, and she is following her betrothed basically towards the US, and then their boat gets attacked by pirates and then by a kraken. She ends up on an island together with one of the pirates that attacked her, which is a boy from France. It's kind of enemies to lovers again, but now they're stuck together on an island, so forced proximity. They kind of learn to survive together. The enemies to lovers was done quite well in this one, because sometimes it's just like, oh my god, we're together now on this island, so now we're besties, you know? But it kind of like came on a bit slowly, and I like that quite a bit, and then it all works out in the end. I like this one a lot. I gave this 4.5 stars, so I should put it in great but not perfect. The next we have A Prayer for the Crown Shy, also by Becky Chambers, which is the second part of A Psalm for the Wild-Built. And I gave this 4 stars back then. I'm gonna put it in great but not perfect. I liked it, but you know, I kind of could have also left A Psalm for the Wild-Built just where it was. I don't think I needed a second book. People find out that this tea monk has met a robot, which is like, it never happened before. People weren't even really sure if robots still existed. And they were kind of like famous because of that, and everyone wants to meet this robot. And it still explores a lot of deeper meanings, which is nice. I don't know, I just felt like it was a bit of an add-on. It was still really good, but I don't think I needed to have that second part, basically. It's not as good as the first one, but it's still really good. Honestly, Becky Chambers, her writing is just beautiful. And next we have Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. And I'm gonna put this in 10 out of 10, would read again. Beautiful, honestly. Okay, so this is about a girl. Evangeline, I think is what she's called. I am not good at remembering names in books, honestly. She makes a deal with the Prince of Hearts, because the guy she loves suddenly runs off with her sister, and she basically wants him back or something. So she makes a deal with the Prince of Hearts, and the Prince of Hearts tells her that he will fix everything in exchange for 3 kisses. And then basically so many things happen. She becomes famous because of what happens, and then she's invited to go to a ball in like this wintry kingdom, and the vibes are just so good. And basically this entire book is just a fairy tale. I love fairy tales so much. Like, I grew up just reading the Grimm and Anderson books just over and over and over and over again, and this is basically just a fairy tale, but then bigger. It's a full book, but it's still a fairy tale. And it's just beautiful. I love it so much. And then it's just part 1 of a series. I recently got part 2 and 3 for my birthday and for Christmas. So I will be continuing this series very, very soon. I'm very excited about it. Next, we have another Monica Booth pirate story, which is White Waters. I'm pretty sure that this is the short story that she had. Okay, so this is the short story. Which is about the child of the people that I talked about in that first book. She wants to try and find her parents. She was kept on the mainland for years, being raised by somebody else, and she wants to find her parents. And then a lot of stuff happens, and it's a very short story. I think it was very enjoyable. I gave it 4 stars with the simple review, I love my little pirate stories. So that's about it. I think I'm gonna put that one in good enough, because it was like 4 stars, but not like entirely 4 stars, you know. It was not like, wow. It's not as good as the other 2 books. I love the other 2 books. This one is just a fun little extra short story, but it doesn't give you that much extra, you know. And then we have the Enchanted Sonata. This is by Heather Dixon Walworth, and this is almost a sort of fairy tale. I'm gonna put it in good enough, because I wasn't like wowed by it. It was still really good, and I liked it a lot. Is it like on the same level? Yeah, it's on the same level as those books. This is basically the Nutcracker, just a tiny bit different. And I liked just reading about the Nutcracker, which feels like a very wintry fairy tale on its own. So I just enjoyed reading that. And then it's about this girl who plays piano, and she kind of saves the Nutcracker world by playing piano, basically. So that is kind of enjoyable. Then we have A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, which I, like, the second after I finished it, I gave it 5 stars, because I felt the writing was really good and it was quite impactful to me. However, the more I thought about it in the days after, I kind of forgot what the story was even about. So apparently it didn't make that much of an impression on me. Yeah, I was kind of just forgetting the story. I know it's about, it's basically a sort of magical story as well. Because this is about a boy who meets this tree monster that lives in his backyard. But the tree monster kind of helps him deal with himself and with his own thoughts and feelings about his mother possibly dying, because his mother is very ill. It's very simple. It's a very short book as well, but I did very, very much enjoy it. I think I'm gonna put it in great, but not perfect, because I really I remember thoroughly enjoying it. It was so short that I went through it immediately, and I think like maybe that's also the reason why I didn't retain that much, because it was so short and I went through it so fast. But I did think the writing was really, really good. Then we have the final one of the pirate books. I'm just gonna go over the synopsis for this one, just so we know for sure. So this is again about Charlie, the girl from the White Waters short story. However, now she's 17 and she's lived with her parents on the ship. But her father died. Charlie is gonna go after her father's ship, which was stolen, I think, and then the treasure that her father was after all these years. This is good. I think it's again enemies to lovers. She does like her enemies to lovers in this series. I'm gonna put this one in good enough, because I remember not liking it as much as the other ones. What was my review? Yeah, did not enjoy this one as much as the others in the series. Yeah, I felt like maybe this one was a bit too all over the place, and I don't think I was too much into the romance in it. So I think that's it. I just really remember not liking this one as much as the other ones. So I'm just gonna put them one lower, and I think that's fair. Then I have for you The Only One Left by Riley Sager. Sager? I don't know how to pronounce his name. Anyway, I gave it 4 stars here. It's about an older woman who lives alone in a house, and she is rumored to have murdered her entire family. And then it's about this girl. She works as a nurse, and she is hired to be the private nurse of this woman who has murdered her entire family. And she doesn't talk. And we basically get thrown into this mystery of why did she do it? What exactly happened? Can we find out what happened? And it's quite exciting, honestly. I was very much intrigued by this book. I liked it a lot. I thought the twist was pretty good. I'm gonna put it in great but not perfect. Then next we have To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. I'm gonna put this in good enough. This is about a mermaid, but like mermaids are a bit more evil than in the regular mermaid stories. This is about like a mermaid princess. She's the daughter of the Sea Queen. So this is a bit Little Mermaid inspired. Like the Sea Queen is more like Ursula. This mermaid, for every birthday that she has, she needs to kill a prince and collect his heart. And she kind of defied her mother a tiny bit, so she's banished, I think. But there's this one prince who has killed so many mermaids. So he's kind of hunting her, but she's also hunting him because she wants his heart. But oh yeah, then she is like in the Little Mermaid. She is kind of like banished. So she is turned into a human, which she ends up on that prince's ship. And then this sort of enemies to lovers thing is happening, and we still kind of need to fight the sea witch at some point because she wants to overtake her mother. And that's kind of like the short summary. And I thought it was good. It was decent. It was enjoyable. I thought the writing was a bit cringy at points, which is not always a bad thing, but in this book I didn't enjoy it that much. Plus I think the enemies to lovers, it went to lovers quite quickly, I think, from what I can remember. Yeah, it was good. I just didn't enjoy it that much. It was fine. Decent enough. Good enough, basically, is what you would say. Next up, we have Sisters of the Lost Nation by Nick Medina. I'm gonna put it over there. Sisters of, yeah, okay. Did I give it? I gave it 4 stars, but it was a literally Dead Book Club pick from Books and Lala on YouTube, which is about girls living in, do you call it a reservation, I think? I never know if you call it a reserve or a reservation. In the US, where Native Americans live. Girls from this reservation, they go missing, as well as the sister of the main character. And we go on this sort of like creepy horror-ish hunt, because there is some like Native American lore worked into this that gives it a bit of a horror vibe, like something weird is going on. But then you also have like the actual realities of being a Native American woman in the US and like the dangers that come with that, basically. It's kind of like interwoven. I thought it was nice, it was enjoyable, but it's also a bit like sad and depressing. The writing was nice. I liked it a lot. Then next up, I read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry, which is what people like to call a cozy fantasy. I'm gonna put it in good enough. It was indeed a cozy fantasy. It was very cozy. It's about an orc. She wants to get out of the adventure life and start a coffee shop. And then things happen. She makes a lot of new friends, new people working there. And then something bad happens, and it's basically just, it's enjoyable, it's cozy, it's about the power of friendship, and that's it. I don't feel like there was a lot of depth, but it was just enjoyable and fun. So I'm gonna put it in good enough, because I had a good enough time with it, but it's nothing more than that to me. Then next I had You Know What You Did by Katie Nien. I think that's how you pronounce it, right? Nien? I think I'm gonna put it, there was just something wrong. For now, let me check if I wrote anything, because honestly, I don't remember much about this book. I have, in my review, I gave it 3.5 stars. There's a lot I did and a lot I didn't like, and I hate that I figured out the plot twist way before the end. So this is about a woman named Annie, and her mother dies, and she is suffering from OCD, and basically a lot of weird stuff starts happening, and she starts kind of getting like disturbed by different things and fixating on different things, and like she starts wondering what exactly happened to her mother. And yeah, a lot of weird things just start happening. And I kind of figured out quite early why everything was happening. So then the plot twist in the end, it didn't really come across very well. So I didn't really like that. I think it was pretty decently written. Just gonna put it, there was just something wrong. Specifically with me figuring out the plot twist. I don't know why, but that's just the feeling I have. Sometimes it's just about the feeling, you know? Then next up, I'm gonna have a very, very short story called Flamingo Beach by Suzanne Vermeer. This is a short book that you got for free during the, like, we have the National Book Week in the Netherlands. And then when you bought a book or a magazine or whatever at the bookstore, you would get this small book for free. And this is about a couple who are having a vacation on Curacao, and then a woman is murdered. And that's basically it. It was fine. A lot of people are very negative about this. But yeah, it took me like an hour to read. It was very, very short. I don't remember anything about it, honestly. So I'm just gonna put it in there was just something wrong, because if I don't remember anything from it, there just wasn't anything good in it, right? Next, I read The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. I'm gonna put this in great, but not perfect. This one was so enjoyable. This is the second book in the Thursday Murder Club series. I loved the first Thursday Murder Club book. It's about 4 elderly people who live in an elderly... It's like one of those like neighborhoods. So you have like different apartments, different places, and they live there. But in the first book, like in every book, they try to solve a murder, basically, that's going on, that happened, whatever, it's from the past. And the first book I really, really enjoyed. I love the characters in this. They're so fun and just fun to hang out with. Like, I feel like I just want to hang out with all of these people. They're so lovely, and I love how they're all like very much their own personality. Like, you can imagine these people. There's some badass elderly people. They're so fun. The first book I liked a little bit less than the second, because the first book I felt like we were trying to like plot twist a bit too much. So we're like, oh my god, I'm so entirely sure that this person is the murderer. We're gonna catch him. And then, oh my god, turns out it isn't him. Okay, now I'm entirely sure that this person is the murderer. We're gonna catch him again. Oh no, it turns out it isn't him. And then it happened like 4 times or something, so it was a bit too much for me. But this one didn't have that, and this one had so much more extra fun stuff about these characters, and I think it was just really, really fun. So I loved it. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't a 5-star for me, but definitely high up my list, and I will continue reading this series in 2025 because it's just a really fun, enjoyable series, honestly. The next we have Heartstopper Volume 5. Where did I put it? I gave it 4 stars. I'm gonna put it in good enough, just because honestly I do not remember what happens in this book at all. So I read the first 4 volumes last year, and I do really, really enjoy Heartstopper. It's such a cute show. Not just the show, the books as well, of course. The books are really, really cute. I love the show as well, but the books are so cute. In this one, I don't remember a lot of it, I must say. It's basically, I just don't remember. I'm gonna put it in good enough, because I liked it. I remember liking it, but it's not like, ooh, I like, because I just don't remember. I just don't. I'm sorry. Anyway, next a book we're going to talk about The Fletcher by Beth O'Leary. I'm not sure if I'm gonna put it in good enough or in great. What did I give it? I did give it 4 stars. So I read The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary 2 years ago. I made like a whole video about that one as well. Because I liked it, but also didn't like loads of aspects of it. But then I decided to read this one, because I bought this book secondhand somewhere. Thought it would be fun. Put it in good enough for now while we talk about it. So this is about a woman who has to find a place to live. Like, her ex-boyfriend broke up with her and then said like she could live in that apartment for a little while, because he wouldn't be home anyway. And then he started dating someone new immediately or something. And then suddenly she had to move out. So she's moving out. She needs to find a place to stay. And then she finds this ad from this man who says, hey, I work night shifts, so I have a 1-bedroom apartment, but during the day, I'm home. 9 a.m. in the morning till 6 a.m. in the evening, that's when I'm home. And the hours between that, which are normal people hours to be home, I'm not home because I'm at work. So we can basically, I'm looking for someone who can live in the same apartment because I need money. This is where Tiffy, the main character, agrees to live in the same house as this man, share the same house, share the same bed, whatever, and they just don't really meet even, like until like very along in the book. But the best part is they keep in contact by sharing little like post-it notes everywhere around the flat, and that's how they talk to each other, and it's kind of cute. And then they kind of grow into each other, and at some point they meet. I did enjoy this one quite a bit. I gave it 4 stars. Oh, 4.5 even. So going off of that, I would go for great but not perfect, because good enough is like 3.5. So we put it in great but not perfect. Apparently I really enjoyed that one. And then we have another Riley Sager book, which is Middle of the Night. For now I'm going to put this in good enough. I like this less than The Only One Left. The Only One Left was quite the exciting stuff for me. This one a bit less, because this one is about a man. His parents have moved out of their childhood home, or of his childhood home, and he decides to move back in. And then he thinks that he is seeing ghosts. The ghost from one of his childhood best friends. And that's basically how it goes. The little kid disappeared when they were sleeping in a tent together in the backyard, and the kid disappeared. And he lives, and he carries a lot of guilt from that. You kind of like want to get like this thriller paranormal thing, but then in the end not in the end, but like it's way less thriller paranormal thing than I expected, basically. So I think that's why I gave it 3 stars. It was enjoyable enough, like it was good enough, it was fun, it was enjoyable, but like 3.5, that's pretty decent, yeah. I think that's good enough. Then we have The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. For now I'm gonna put it in great but not perfect. This is about a girl in... like I said, I'm bad with time periods. During the Spanish Golden Age, she lives in Madrid. And she works as like a maid for a woman. But turns out she has a bit of like magical powers. Her mistress, the noblewoman, she basically finds out, and then she is forced to use these sort of magical powers to help her mistress. And then in the process of this, she meets this guy who is a bit like unnatural. Everything just goes from there. It has a lot to do with magic, with paranormal stuff, a bit like feminism, like how women were treated in that era. And in my review, I also said, give me similar vibes to Slewfoot. And I think, like, if you've read both books, you would see that they are somewhat similar. So I think it's perfectly fitting that they're in the same tier for my tier ranking. I also mentioned that this book contains some of the most romantic scenes I've read so far. So maybe I should go back and read like the romantic scenes, because apparently I've loved them. I just know that I love Leigh Bardugo's writing. Then next, I decided to read some books that were connected to my big trip over the summer. I went to Thailand and to Indonesia, Bali specifically. So I wanted to read some books by writers that were from that area. So first I read The Blind Earthworm and the Labyrinth from Veerapoiniti Prafa. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm really, really sorry. But this one I thought was beautiful. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It's for some reason a bit simple, but also not. And so it's about 3 people who each lived very different lives that came together at multiple points throughout their lives. Like, they knew each other very well. They just lived very, very different lives. Like, the way they grew up, the way they lived their life later. It's about 2 sisters and then an orphan boy who become friends when they are younger. And then basically just live their life. And you see what happens throughout their life. I don't know, it's a bit in that way all over the place. The translation is done beautifully as well, and I think just the writing, it's a bit fever dream like sometimes, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. It was just a this book was a weird trip kind of, but also it was just stunning. There are some beautiful quotes in there, and yeah, it kind of went all over the place, and then not all over the place, and then slow, and then fast, and then we skip forward, and when we move back, and then you just kind of get an overview of these people and their lives and what they did. I would recommend reading it, honestly. I think it's a beautiful book, and it's so specific that maybe just you know, you have to experience it once, you know? Then next up I have The Sad Part Was by Prabdayun, which I'm gonna put in There Was Just Something Wrong. This is also by a Thai writer, but this is short stories. I enjoy short stories, honestly. They can be really good, and I like to just go through books a bit faster, you know? Like, oh, I just want to read something quick. I do enjoy short stories. However, this one, like some of these are quite funny. I thought like the first one or two I quite enjoyed, but it went a bit downhill throughout the book. But yeah, I don't know. It was just not that much interesting and unique things in there that either that I remember or that drew me into the book. It was just basically the fact that I had something short and quick to read while on my trip that really made me keep reading. There were some nicer ones in there, but also just less nice ones. Then I read Morley Bardugo. So I read Shadow and Bone, which I'm gonna put in good enough. And then immediately after I read Siege and Storm, which I think for now I'm also gonna put in there. Let me see if I wrote any reviews. I just, you know, I enjoyed this book because I'm just gonna talk about them together as if they're one book, honestly. Because this is a trilogy, and I still haven't read the final part. I just read part 1 and part 2. This was an enjoyable book. I had a good time. For some reason, after reading the 2 books, even though they're good, and even though I'm having a nice time, they're not drawing me in a way that I'm like, I need to read this 3rd book. So I think that just shows me that it's okay, but not the best. So I'm just gonna put both of them in good enough. Like, I'm having a good time. It's like a 3.5 stars. But it's not like, wow, wonderful, amazing. Like, I have some other books that I would rather read than read part 3 of this series, probably. Up next, I have Apple and Knife by Intan Paramaditha, which is an Indonesian writer, which is also short stories. I thought, like, let's give more short stories a try. I'm gonna put it in, I gave it 2 stars. So it's like, I guess it exists. It was marketed to me as being like a bit of like female horror-ish. Inspired by horror fiction, myths, and fairy tales, Apple and Knife is an unsettling ride that swerves into the supernatural to explore the dangers and power of occupying a female body in today's world. But I just felt most of it was a bit weird. Like, I like uncomfortable stuff. I enjoy macabre stuff. I enjoy unsettling stuff. But this was just, I don't think I understood it. Maybe that's why. So I'm just gonna put it in, I guess, like it exists, and I don't remember a single thing that happened in this book. But I do know that I wasn't really enjoying it, so I guess. Next up we have I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. I'm gonna put this in great, but not perfect. This one I thoroughly enjoyed. This one was so funny to me. This is about a man who writes basically a biography, which we are reading now, about the one summer that he became a teenage slasher, and it kind of mocks slasher movies. It makes fun of them. It takes the entire premise of slasher movies and creates a fun story out of them. It's predictable, but also not, but it's so fun. To me, it was a really, really fun book. I had a really good time with it. The next up, I have The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I have to say that before this year, I didn't really read that many romance books. Don't know why, I just didn't. But this year, I started reading more romance books. And this one, I loved so much. I loved it so much. It was really, really good. So this is about a woman who comes to live in her aunt's apartment, but her aunt passed away. And her aunt has told her once that this apartment is pretty magical. She didn't really believe it, but she figures out that every time, or sometimes when she enters this apartment, the apartment sends her 7 years into the past, I think. During the summer, the main character, without knowing it, moves 7 years into the past when she enters this apartment, and then there's this man living there suddenly. The way their paths cross and their timelines intertwine, and the way they learn about each other and meet each other, and everything flows through each other, it's just so good. The whole storyline as well of her just recently losing her aunt, who she loved dearly, and just having to deal with that grief as well. I think it was written so well. I thought I loved I love this story so much. It was so good, and it was romantic and lovely, and just, I loved it. I thought it was a great romance. Sometimes a romance is just simple, but sometimes it has this extra thing, and this is that extra thing. It felt a bit magical, and just the way their timelines just intertwine is just beautiful. I loved it very much. Then I listened to the audiobook of We Were Liars. I'm gonna put it in there as just something wrong. Didn't really like it. I don't know. I felt, yeah, it felt a bit predictable and weird, and it existed, but it's not one of my favorite things at all. It's about teenagers. Every summer, like, their family goes to like an expensive house that they own, like their grandfather owns or something, and visit them. It's about the relationship between all these teenagers, but also something happened, and it's not clear what happened. It's bad that they know, but you don't know what happened, and it's a bit of a plot twist at the end, but it wasn't like that shocking to me. So I was like, I don't know, it was fine, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. Then we have Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I'm gonna put this in great but not perfect. Again, this is such a good romance novel. It's really good. I like this one a lot. These main characters, they meet through Reddit, because this guy made a Reddit post that every single time he dates someone, after they break up, that person goes on to find the love of their life. And the other main character, the woman, she reads this post, she's like, oh my god, that's so funny, I have the same thing. So they make this pact to just be together for the summer, because then afterwards they can break up, and then they would both find their soulmate. And it goes from there. It's just good. It's a good story. You can actually believe that these people like each other and would be together, you know? Then I have something completely different, which is The Three Body Problem. I'm gonna put this in... I'm in doubt if I should put it in 10 out of 10 would read again or a great but not perfect. Because the thing is, this is a sci-fi book about... You've probably seen the Netflix show or heard about it. It's about scientists, and in China run into like some weird stuff going on. And there's a lot with a lot of science, a game, a video game, and aliens. It has just a little bit of everything. And I thought this book is so good. I also watched a Netflix show, which I did like, but it misses so much from the book that I thought the book did great. The book doesn't have like a lot of characters that you get attached to. It does talk about a lot of the moral choices that a lot of these characters have to make, and I thought that was done really well. It's just a very insane story, honestly, but the thing that I both loved and hated about the book is the book was very slow at some points, also because we're just literally explaining science to you. There was even like a chapter that was fully, like the entire chapter was like a document from the government that was redacted, so you could only read parts of it. But I love stuff like that. It keeps me intrigued, like it's document, like it's not going to be like lyrical writing or something. And then they explain all the science behind everything, which my tiny brain could not always understand, but it does make for like really interesting stories. And I thought it was really interesting, like trying to understand the science and the fact that there is science to back up whatever is going on in this weird sci-fi book. I love that. On the one hand, I thought the book was quite slow at points and difficult to get through because of all the science, and it like the writing is not like very lyrical or anything. Then on the other hand, that's also why the book is good in itself. So I'm gonna keep it in great but not perfect for now, but I will continue this series in this year because I want to finish it. Next up we have How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix, another Grady Hendrix, which is the same writer as the horror story one. The horror story one, which is so funny to me. And then this one was good. I'm gonna put it in good enough. Like I'm gonna put it like a 3.5. It wasn't as good as Horror Story. I thought that one was so good. This one was funny. This is about a woman who, her parents died and she needs to go to their house and help prepare, like empty their house so it can be sold. But then she also gets into a fight with her brother who doesn't want to sell the house and then does. But then her mother made puppets. I think the thing that gets a lot of people is that this isn't really a haunted house. There is haunted stuff going on, but the house isn't really haunted, but other things are. It was very chaotic, very weird, fun, but like other people say in the reviews as well, like sometimes it was just a bit boring as well. It's okay. I thought it was good enough. It was a fun, like a 3.5. Then we have Funny Story by Emily Henry, which I'm gonna put in great but not perfect. I thought this was a very, very enjoyable, another very, very enjoyable romance novel. This is about a woman who is like, her fiance leaves her for someone else. And then she needs a place to live, so she moves in with the ex that was dumped for her fiance. So the ex of the new girlfriend of her ex-fiance. Confusing. But the two people who are basically both left for this affair, they move in together and then they become friends, whatever happens next. It was very, very fun. It was very enjoyable. I like these characters a lot. I actually also believe these people ending up together. But I was gonna say, like, from like the 4 like actual romances that I read, but like 3 of them are about people and their living situation. Because you have the flat share with the weird like arrangement, then you have the 7-year slip with the magical apartment, and then you have this where people have to move in together because of their exes. Apparently I like weird living situations. Anyway, I thought that was a really good book, so I'm gonna put it in great but not perfect. Then I have for you The Eternal Return of Clara Hart, which is an audiobook that I listened to. I'm gonna put it in good enough. This book is about a boy, a teenage boy, who goes to a party, and at the end of the party, Clara Hart ends up dead, which is a girl who goes to school, who also goes to the party. And then you get this like Groundhog Day situation where he relives this day over and over and over again until he figures out how to fix it, because he assumes that it is because Clara Hart died and he needs to save her, and he tries all different ways to save her. But the thing is that this in itself is about SA. Big trigger warning. This is about SA. This is about teenage boys, and also like locker room talk, boys will be boys, that kind of thing. And since this is from the point of view of this boy, me, as a woman, it is very, very easy to see these signs of abuse and what's going on very early in the story, and he does not recognize it because that would mean that his friends would also be bad guys, basically. It's a bit frustrating to read because you know what's going on and you know how the girl can be saved or what is the solution to this problem. And he keeps thinking about other solutions that have nothing to do with it, and it's a bit victim-blamey as well. He thinks if the girl doesn't end up drunk, she also won't end up dead, for example. It's a very difficult topic. It was a good book. I don't know, it made it very difficult to read as a woman, knowing, like, very, very quickly seeing what is going on, and then having this main character who basically just refuses to see what's going on. It's quite difficult, so that's why I didn't really like it, and the story did make an impression on me, and it was pretty good, so I'm gonna put it in good enough. I think it was pretty good. Then we have Once Upon a Pumpkin Spice Latte, which I'm gonna put also in good enough. I gave it 3 stars. There was just something wrong. Maybe. Okay, so this is basically also romance. However, very fall themed. I wanted to read some very fall themed books, and this one I got for free on Kindle once, so I thought I would just read it. This is about a girl who lives in America and a boy who is a prince of this country that doesn't exist. It's a bit more fairy tale like, because suddenly there's this prince. They meet each other when they're very young, which did make it a bit weird for me, because I think the girl was like 16 and the boy was like 10, 11, and then they became friends and they kept writing each other until they were very, like, a lot older, and then started a relationship. And it was a bit weird, like, having that age difference that young. I don't know. But this girl, she lives in a part of the US or something that is very focused on fall themed stuff, like a harvest festival, whatever. And her father had a recipe for pumpkin spice, and her father passed away, so she took over that business and she wanted to perfect the pumpkin spice, and she did. So now she's selling pumpkin spice, literally everything, anything that has to do with pumpkin spice, she's selling it. And then this prince, he has to go there as like a state visit or something and celebrate the harvest festival with them, and she has to give him a tour, and they're friends, but not a lot of people know they're friends. And then it's almost like a Cinderella themed thing, like there's some Cinderella stuff going on, so it's like a fairy tale modern day about pumpkin spice, literally. Which is fine, but it was just not, there was not a lot of depth, let's just say there. And I got a bit too sick of the pumpkin spice at some point, because they literally sold everything pumpkin spice. So that's that. Then I wanted to do more fall reading, so I read The Castle of Otranto, which is a gothic novel. I'm also gonna put it in, there's just something wrong. It's also because it's a bit more of a classic and it's gothic, so it's a bit weird, but that's what I like. But it also went a bit all over the place, and maybe that's just the writing from then. I think it was a decent book. Maybe I'm also not used to reading classics, so maybe that's just on me. But I want to get into reading more classics. And because this was a gothic novel, it was maybe not the best to start. But anyway, I thought it was it was decent enough. So I'm gonna put it in, yeah, I'm gonna give it 3 stars, like there was just something. And then I picked another one of those free Kindle books, because, you know, the previous one was pretty decent, it was enjoyable enough, so why not pick another fall themed one? And this one, I'm gonna put in should have DNF. This was god awful. So awful that it was actually funny. A small town girl moving to a different small town, and then starting a bookshop / cafe and meeting the handsome sheriff, and they start a relationship, and then shit goes down. Too much shit, honestly. Plus the writing, it made no sense, honestly. Like, so literally in the prologue, she drives through this town which she just spent one night in. Like, she was just traveling through the US because that's what she wanted to do. She drove through this town after sleeping there for one night, and she's like, oh my god, I need to move here. And then immediately she drives through the main street and she spots an apartment for rent. So she just stops there and is like, oh my god, I'm gonna rent this. And then she lived there. Took her about half an hour basically to move somewhere, I guess. It was just so all over the place and nothing made sense. It really didn't. Literally at one point she calls for 911 and she lives upstairs from the bookshop. But there was a break-in in the bookshop. She's afraid that the person is in her house as well, so she calls 911, and these officers, they just drive over to her and then check the bookshop and then just stay downstairs in the bookshop and just be like, oh, she isn't here, she must have gone out. Didn't even check if she was home. And then one of the other main characters, he runs upstairs and he finds her knocked unconscious basically. So makes no sense at all. It was really bad. It was so bad that I had a great laugh at it, but it was really bad. I should not have spent my time on it. So I should have DNF'd that one. Next, we're keeping in the fall themes. I read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe, which was good enough. 3.5, I guess. It was enjoyable. It was an enjoyable book. It's about a girl who takes over her aunt's pumpkin spice cafe, which is just a coffee shop, but in a little town, and this town loves fall, and then this fall harvest festival, whatever. And she meets like the rugged man who has had his heart broken by his previous fiance. It's about them. Do they start dating? Do they not start dating? Do they like each other or whatever? It's very fun. It's cozy. I do think the characters didn't have that much depth to them, that it was very like convincing to me. Sometimes when we're going into these themed like seasonal books, we're too much focused on the seasonal vibes to give some depth to other things. So I think that's what happened here. It was a fun book. It was good enough. I had a cozy time. I think it fits right into the line with all the other books that are in there right now. Then I read Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo, which I'm gonna put in great but not perfect. Last year I read the first book, Ninth House, which again, Leigh Bardugo's writing is beautiful, just like in The Familiar. It's so good, but it's a bit slow at times, and I think that's what gets me. Like, the scenes are like intriguing and I want to keep reading, and then you kind of end the scene and you're like in this in-between stage, and it didn't entice me enough to keep reading. That's what happened with Ninth House, but I still loved the story in itself, like in the totality of it. Like, looking back at the story, I loved it, but just the reading process of it didn't intrigue me enough every time to like keep reading, so it took me quite a long time. This one also took me a bit longer, but this one kept me intrigued for longer periods. I also feel like I was just in a weird mental stage, so I didn't really have mental brain space to keep reading. That's more it this time, but yeah, I do love this story. I think Ninth House and Hellbent together, it's just a great story. Yeah, it's a bit like, it's fantasy, it's a bit dark, it's a bit thrillery, there's magic, but it's good. I liked it a lot. It's dark academia. So yeah, this is part 2 of that Ninth House series, which is about Alex, who takes a position at a really, really big university, but as a part of a secret society that deals with other secret societies that perform magic rites, basically. And then stuff goes down. Then I have Loud, Accept Nothing Less Than the Life You Deserve by Drew Follow. I think this is the only non-fiction book that I read this year. So I love Drew Follow. I listen to her podcast weekly. I think she's so funny. She has a great way of interviewing people and building connections with people, and what she talks about, it's very interesting to me. So I wanted to read her book. I listened to her audiobook. It was also narrated by her. I don't think she should narrate a lot of books. I like that she narrated her own book. However, the way she narrated it, it wasn't fitting for the writing style. Because the writing style was a bit similar to how she tells her stories in her podcast, which is very like spontaneous sounding and whatever. And then she was narrating this, but she was clearly reading from the page. The way the book was written was to sound very spontaneous and like a conversation and whatever. And then the way she was narrating it, it didn't bring that across very well. So it sounded a bit forced at some points, which made the jokes not land as well. So maybe if I just read it myself, like read the book myself, it would have been different. But it was fine. Comparing this book to her podcast, which I listen to a lot, like I've listened to almost all the episodes, this doesn't give much new information or insights from what she usually brings. In that way, it was a kind of a bit of a waste of time. There were like 2 or 3 stories in there that I was like, oh my god, this is new. I'm very grateful that you're sharing this information about yourself with us. So it's sort of like an autobiography about her life, but also about the lessons that she learned that we could learn from her. But that is also how she makes her content. So all her content is already like that. I was just maybe expecting a bit more. It was fun enough, basically, but it didn't provide me with anything new for me. Like 1 or 2 stories that I was like happy to hear from her. It didn't provide me a lot of new insights that I didn't have already. Then I have for you The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I'm gonna put this in Great But Not Perfect. I thoroughly enjoyed this book, honestly. It's a thriller. It's about a psychiatrist who wants to treat the silent patient. This is a woman who has murdered her husband, has since never spoken again. And people don't know why she did it. It's a bit similar to The Only One Left in that regard, I guess. People don't know why she did it or how she did it, but she's in inpatient treatment now. This psychiatrist, he wants to get her to talk again, basically. So it's that process, and then you learn a lot of new things. And it's quite a good plot twist in the end, honestly. But yeah, it wasn't like one of my favorites from the year, but I did really, really love this one. I would put it maybe like above some of the other books in here, but I wouldn't put it here. For some reason, it was just missing a tiny bit for me there. Then I read The Color of Pain by E.G. Rose, which is also a book that I got for free on Kindle, which I enjoyed a lot more than the other ones. I'm gonna put it in good enough now, because I did enjoy it. I would give it like 3.75, 3.5, something like that, stars. This is about a boy in an orphanage who can see auras, basically. He's bullied there, people don't like him, he's the weird kid. He gets this new caseworker who is similar to him. She can also see auras, but she teaches him how to use this, basically. And it's a bit creepy, it's a bit weird. But there are also some plot lines that just don't really get an ending in this book. It's also the first book in a series, but there's a lot of plot lines that just aren't discussed at all anymore further on in the book. But yeah, it's quite creepy, and you feel for this kid, but I don't know if I want to read any of the other stories. So I think I'm gonna put it in good enough. Like, I had a good enough time. It was creepy, it was spooky. I liked it for the time being, but I don't think I need to read the other books. Then I have The Dark Becomes Her, which I'm gonna put in Great But Not Perfect. This is by Judy I. Lin, and this is a YA book. It's about a Taiwanese girl living somewhere in America. Her sister is, she finds out that her sister is kind of like being influenced by some dark forces, and she turns out that she can see some like demon creatures, basically. So she finds out this whole kind of dark evil thing that's going on in Chinatown, and she's gonna try to uncover it to save her sister, basically. And I quite liked it. Okay, so next I started going into more Christmassy books, and first I read The Nightmare Before Christmas by Sarah Raj, which I'm gonna give it a great but not perfect. It was very, very fun. It's about the Prince of Christmas meeting the Prince of Halloween. And it's similar to The Nightmare Before Christmas, like the movie, where each holiday is provided for by a different area or like a different group of people, a different family. In this case, royal families. They meet, but they're not allowed to date because there's a lot going on. And it's dramatic and it's fun and it's a bit camp. And I just love having little gothic Halloween boys running around in a Christmassy town. I had a good time. And then finally, the final book that I read this year was Let It Snow by John Green, Maureen Johnson, and I think she's Kristen Miracle or something. No, Lauren Miracle. I'm really sorry about that. Lauren Miracle. And this is... I'm going to put this in great but not perfect. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. This is a short story book, so there's 3 short stories in this, each by a different author. However, the stories are interconnected. So they each take place in the same town, and the characters do meet throughout their stories. And I thought that was so fun. And I really liked that we got it from 3 different authors, because the stories are different, but they take place in the same town. But because you get different authors, like the characters are not too similar. They get their own thoughts. They get a different writing style, basically. So the stories are very different in that aspect. I feel like if only one writer would have written these 3 stories, the characters may have sounded the same in their thoughts, for example. So I like that we get the 3 different writing styles. I thought the stories were very fun and cute. They all take place during a giant winter storm. It's giving a very cozy feel. And then just 3 love stories. And they all end up well. And I had a really good time with it, honestly. It was a very enjoyable time. I read through this quite quickly. The writing was great. Great. Lovely. Enjoyable. This is it. This is all my books that I read last year, rated. I think I'm just gonna adjust a few things. I'm gonna put Sisters of the Lost Nation 1 down. I just don't remember that much from that. Like all of the books in my red tier are great, and I feel like that one just isn't up to that level. And then I think that this is my final review, I think. Yes, this is my final rating of all of the books that I have read in 2024. I'm sorry that this video was way too long. I had a really, really good time reading all of these books this year, and I can't wait to read more this year. Thanks for watching. If you want more book content, please let me know, because I am essentially not a booktube channel. I am a makeup lifestyle channel. I just like to add in some books every once in a while. So please let me know if you want to see more book content. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. If you want to see even more from me, my Instagram is linked down below, where I share all my makeup looks and creative endeavors. And that's going to be it for me today. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Toodles!